Okay. Go ahead and get started this morning. Jim, would you mind starting us off with a prayer, please?
Father in heaven, thank you for being with us this day, for giving us a great day to come study your word. We ask, Father, that you will be with our teachers this hour. They bring forth your word. We can understand and continue to learn more about you, the way you would like for us to live. Let us continue to forgive those that are enemies. Let us ask that we continue to be good Christians, walk in the light, be servants unto you, and serve you continuously. In Jesus' name.
Okay. Forgot to get your microphone.
I'll let you do that all over again.
I'll help you. It sure helps with the audio on the video, though. Be able to hear what everyone's saying. Okay, so last week we talked about, and we've been talking about 1 Timothy. We're going to continue on in 1 Timothy chapter 5 this morning. Does anybody remember what we talked about last week? A little bit, yep. Talked about elders, and what about elders in particular? Double honor. We talked about widows before that. Yeah. Well, the proper channels to take up an accusation, right? How Paul wrote to Timothy not to be hasty in the laying on or appointing of people, of men, especially for elderships. And then how we kind of wrapped up with how talks about basically the truth will come out, even if it's not immediately obvious. Eventually, it will come out. Anybody have any thoughts on that, or anything you wanted to wrap up on that before we talk about a verse we skipped over, which was verse 23? Nothing? All right. So we skipped over verse 23. Why did we skip over it? It seems... We've been talking about... Huh? Well, I was just wondering why you thought. I didn't necessarily have a reason other than I didn't think we had time to talk about it last week. But 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 23 is what we're going to start off talking about. So what has he been talking about in the surrounding verses, and surrounding verse 23? What we talked about last week, right? Keeping things not, if something needs to be said about somebody, we talked about partiality, that we shouldn't have that. And then in the middle of that, all that, it says, no longer drink only water, but use a little wine for the sake of your stomach and your frequent ailments. Does that seem out of place? It just kind of comes out of nowhere, right? I mean, Paul does that quite often.
They have to do because of the requirements of membership.
How so? I mean, just
not to partake of wine, and it may have to do with, since he's talking about elders, that Paul usually does is, I need to let it know it's okay for him. He's not an elder.
Right.
Partake of, just like a deacon.
It's an interesting. You read the commentaries on this and you study this a bit, and you realize how important a verse like this is. Like, you look at it and you're kind of offhand, you might go, well, that's just kind of odd and out there in the middle of nowhere. And Why is that even there? But it's really a beautiful verse, and this commentary that I've been reading calls it a jewel, because it really proves, it's another kind of nail in the authenticity of the letter. Because if you look at that, and if you're going to say that somebody wrote this later and it wasn't really Paul, well, how would that get in there? And why would that be put in there? It's pretty interesting. What do we learn from this verse? Yeah, that's definitely true. What's to me, I think there's at least one thing that's pretty obvious, and I've never really thought about it before. But if you read it, what does it say about Timothy?
He had some stomach problems.
Well, there's that. Well, I guess we got two things. Yeah, apparently had some frequent ailments, right? That's one thing. What about the first sentence or first couple of words there? So exclusively, yeah. I think the King James Version says no longer drink water, and I think that's it. Does anybody have one handy? Is that what you're reading from? Does that mean no longer drink water at all?
There are many parts of the world that don't drink water because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not pure like in the United States. We just take it for granted. We can go to faucet. People don't do that in the rest of the world.
Right.
Did you think it was bad that many years ago?
Yes.
Really?
Probably worse.
It probably was, but I'm sure they had ways. I mean, just like we have ways of doing it now. You can boil water.
Surely they had charcoal filters.
Yeah. I don't think they had charcoal filtering yet, but I'm sure they had figured out boiling water and things like that. But keeping it, because I mean, water is a pretty important staple, right? So I got the wrong verse here. So that word, let's see here. Drink water exclusively. No longer drink water exclusively. What does it say about Timothy then? Does it mean that what did he drink? Water, right? It's kind of was like what would be the equivalent of this verse? I was thinking about this, and this is kind of like a prescription, right? For medicine.
It still is.
Yeah, right. There's alcohol in medicines today, right?
Yeah. But there's doctors that will prescribe
Wine for the heart.
wine for the heart.
Yeah. This is an interesting thought, because what does it reveal about Timothy is that he was what? Apparently abstaining from wine and needed a prescription to feel that it was all right, right? No water, drink water exclusively or only. This is an interesting verse. It really is. It's one that, as Ernie had said, depends on who you talk to as to what the meaning of it is. But I encourage you to go and study that a little further, because there's all kinds of interesting thoughts on that. Apparently, he had frequent ailments, and that would help. So,
No matter what you think it is, one thing that it does say is this was a medical thing.
absolutely,
It wasn't just go out.
a license to, yep. And it's another interesting thing too. I didn't think about this. Who was somebody that Paul was around? Luke. What was Luke? Physician. So could this have came from the idea of Luke? They could have. You can kind of see them talking about it. It's like, Timothy's. He gets sick a lot. And Luke going, you should write him to. He needs to drink a little wine. Maybe that'll help him out. That's an interesting thought. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I think we've talked about that about as long as I wanted to.
It still seems to me, and I could be totally wrong, but in the context of 17 through 24, it just seems to me like Paul is putting that in there, not only for his sake, but for the speaking elders. It just appears to me that Paul was writing this, and I need to tell him this.
Yeah, it's,
I mean, that's just my opinion.
yeah.
It seems out of place.
It really does.
In the context of, but that's not unusual for Paul.
It's not. Right. That's kind of the hard thing about reading some of Paul's writings is when to apply significant contextual meaning and when not to, right? That's kind of difficult. So, but then another thing about this verse, before we stop, what does it say about the wine? How much wine? Little. I mean, it's not like what Ernie was saying. It's a medicinal purposes. It's not like go out and it doesn't, on the contrary, say drink only wine, right? Because that would be, you couldn't survive on just a little wine if that was your sole source of liquids, right? So.
We don't know what his frequent ailments were. That would be interesting.
It would be, yeah. Yeah, you'll read all kinds of thoughts on this verse, but it is pretty interesting that it's in there and what it says. So
Seems like it kind of points to Timothy's wholehearted dedication to not be,
yeah,
partaking of anything that could be wrong.
or perceived.
Or seen as wrong.
That's right.
And, it was, I think, apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying, for your very reason, you said it better, but that's why I was saying that I think it has to do in the context of leader, elder. Because if he didn't think that the leaders, the elders were told not to, I think you're right that they felt. That's just.
Even for medicinal purposes, he might have been like,
Right.
no, I'm not. But he's saying, look, you need to for your frequent ailments. So
A little is supposed to,
yeah,
some kind of law thing, like no more than one goat skin's worth
Right.
right, or something.
yeah, yeah. A thimble, no more than a thimble. Yeah. So yeah,
But this does do one thing. It separates the eldership from him as an evangelist.
that's right.
Okay, I mean, if we don't do anything, we can see that there's a difference.
Yeah.
Because the elders were told not to, and he says you can.
Yep.
So,
You keep saying they were told not to, what are you referring
the,
to? I said, mine says not much wine.
I thought that was, deacons.
The deacons, verse 8, chapter 3 says not addicted to much wine, but in verse 3 of 3 says not addicted to wine.
Right.
Talking about I don't see where it says not to the elders. Mine says not addicted. Not addicted to too much wine. Better qualifications for a deacon.
Yeah, we're looking at be the beginning of, if it's in Timothy, it'll be chapter 3.
Mine in 3:3 says not given to wine.
Not given to wine. Yeah, mine says not a drunkard. See, the whole question of that, though, it's tough, right? You get to studying alcohol and the wine, and you'll hear there's a bunch of different arguments on that, but it all comes down to the definition of little. Really, and what is drunk? I mean, it's a tough question. That's why, I mean, for me, abstaining completely is the only way to go, because there's no real way that you can know your limits. Even one drink is one drink drunk, right? you're that much closer to a line that is not definitive. So it's something that I don't care to even approach because it's not, there's no line that you can say for sure where you're at. So
Must be sober-minded.
Sober-minded, yeah. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, that's for anything. I mean, I could go for wine or any kind of pain medicine, right? That can all alter your frame of mind. So, and then, like I said, that's different with a prescription, with a set amount, that kind of thing. But it's a tricky subject. You have to study it out on your own. And there's some interesting thoughts on that, on what wine is, even in the New Testament. What does that word mean? Is that fermented wine? There are many that will say no. There are many that say yes. So study it out, see what you think. No, I'll be interested to talk about it if you want.
It's the same word. as you
It is.
use all
Yep.
3 times.
Yep. So what's Ernie saying is the same Greek word is used for fermented wine and for grape juice. And there's no difference in the Greek. So now we do have a Greek word for hard drink. I can't remember what it is. The wine is oinos, but I don't remember what the hard drink is. But that's obvious. That is definitely hard alcohol. The problem is with wine, it could be either or in the Greek. So, all right. Let's go on to chapter 6, shall we? We're probably gonna have a lot of discussion on this. Somebody read chapter 6, 1. Let's just read 1 and 2. We can say a lot about 1 and 2.
That is, many bondservants are under the yoke, count their own masters worthy of all honor, so that the name of God and his doctrine may not be blasphemed. And those who have believing masters, let them not despise them because they are brethren, but rather serve them, because those who are benefited are believers and beloved. Teach and exhort these things.
Look at that. The Bible's condoning slavery. You ever heard that? Have you ever heard anybody out there say, well, how can you believe that book? It condones slavery.
It doesn't necessarily condone it. It says if you're in that situation, that would behave like a Christian should.
Yeah, the Bible does not condone slavery, but the world will tell you that it does.
That's just more political correctness right there.
What do these verses say?
Well,
You can substitute the word employee in there. and it makes the
You
same
could.
thing.
Absolutely. It could mean the same thing, except that it gives it more meaning, right? Slave. But it's absolutely true. If you're an employee of somebody, this should be absolutely what a Christian should behave the same way. What are you saying?
well, I've said before, I think I told you a few weeks ago that during this time of the Roman Empire, they said probably about half of the people were slaves. And there was many free people as there were slaves. And many of the slaves, and even some of the masters, were becoming Christians.
Yeah.
And when we think about this we talk about it on the Wednesday, our Wednesday class, Jesus is saying just because you're a Christian doesn't make you free from the obligations or the law.
Exactly.
That's really basically what he's saying.
Yeah, this commentary here says it's estimated that there were 60 million slaves in the Roman Empire at the time of the writing of this letter. So that's quite a few, right?
But a slave is, I agree with Chuck, but a slave is different than an employee.
Well,
Because an employee, you can leave an employee. You can
Right.
change employees.
And you
Slave,
get
you
paid.
can't. I mean, they own these people.
Yeah, and you get paid as an employee, but this, I think what he was saying is the attitude as an.
No, I agree with it. I said, I agree with him, but there is a
It's a
difference.
Absolutely, I understand.
Because a slave couldn't be free from it, like if he was an employee.
So we see here both ends, right? We see, instructions for what? Both masters that don't believe, right? And those that do.
Well, I think that needs to be pointed out, the fact that there are Christian masters.
There were, weren't there?
And they weren't instructed to free their slaves, like some may think.
You know, that's an interesting thought. You know, you read about that and you think, well, then why aren't they? But what's the kingdom all about? We've been talking, I want to say I really appreciate Ernie's lessons on Wednesday night about the kingdom and how much they're separated from, how it's separated from the worldly governments and things like that. It's really, it's been really eye-opening and helped me understand a lot of things a little more. But let's just throw some examples, think through this.
Well, he talks about slavery as being under a yoke.
He does, doesn't he?
And so that's, I guess you could say, a burden we must bear as if you were slaves, a burden we must bear. Now, although Ernie's right about slaves and employees, but yet we are under a yoke too. If you're not, if you didn't win the DNA lottery, then you're under a yoke that you must work.
Right.
Or I guess there's other options today, but nevertheless, you have to honor those, just like we have to honor our bosses. There's a lot of people we have to honor and look up to, whether we want to or not.
Well, what if he would have wrote here, you know, if you're a slave and you become a Christian, then you shouldn't be a slave. You should be free.
You didn't realize
What if he did?
what he did.
Why isn't it written that way? I mean, I think we can all agree that slavery is wrong, but what kind of slaves were there in this time? We always say slaves as if they were conquered, and that's true. What else? What's the word?
Some slaves were kind of voluntary, like to be off the dead.
Bondservant.
Yeah, in the Old Testament, they were.
Yeah, that's true. That was something that
It was
happened.
basically a job, and
That you're paying off a debt that, you know,
You weren't free until it was busted.
you were working for free, right? There's a lot of people
Like
living like
slaves,
that.
I mean, they get fed and they get places to sleep.
Yeah.
And all that may not be what you want, but.
So I guess you could say you're a slave to the government.
You're slave to taxes, you're slave to mortgage or car payment. Yeah, there's all kinds of things you can be a slave to. Slave to sin. But if Paul had written something to the effect of, if you become a Christian and you deserve to be free, what would that have done?
Everybody
People
would
would
have become.
Yeah, how many people would have become a Christian for what reason?
To be free.
Be false.
Well, it would have been anarchy.
Yeah, it would have created chaos.
Yeah.
And it would have been what? It would have been completely destroyed, and it would have been, it would have absolutely accomplished that.
well, it would have been, like you said, anarchy, but illegal.
It's illegal. Yeah, that's right.
And God doesn't promise Christians a rose garden
No,
here on this earth.
no, it doesn't.
He doesn't, some of those slaves were probably treated better, or had it better than some of the folks that were living in poverty.
Very true.
Yeah, you're probably right.
If the workers or the bondservants are doing their work as if they're doing it for the Lord, then that's gonna
show a lot of character and a changing character, which ideally is going to ease up some of the situation surrounding them.
Yeah.
And even these masters, if they're taskmasters or whatever, they have masters too. All of these people that, if it's, we'll say the Roman government, these people that are in charge of the labor force or whatever, right? If they're in charge of something, they also have masters they answer to.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's not like, every master is just a wealthy man that has an X amount of bondservants working for him just for his own profit.
Especially back in that time. Right? These weren't completely free individuals, right? They still lived under a government that was, not what we have here today. They still owed pretty crazy taxes, still had to answer to the government and things like that, and pay things like that. So,
Another thing I just kind of crossed my mind is, for a slave, being a slave paled in comparison to the persecution that they could face just for being a Christian.
Mhm.
So, being a slave wasn't the worst thing, probably, that they
Right.
faced.
Well, we think being a slave is terrible, but even Paul, under the kingdom of Christ, said he's a bondservant or slave. We're all slaves to Christ.
Absolutely.
We'll look at the master that we serve.
That really expresses the meaning of the word bondservant. Right? Because he paid the debt, right? We're completely in his debt. It's the least we can do to live our lives for him, what he's done for us, right? It's kind of the same idea. I don't know if you've ever seen like I'm trying to remember a movie that does this, where, a guy saves somebody's life. And the guy's like, oh, he just kind of clings to that guy and says, I owe you one, I'm going to. Yeah, something like that. So it's like, you saved my life, I'm going to stay with you until I can repay that, right? Something like that. A bondservant is essentially the same type of deal. They're not
That
working.
song that we sing as youth, Pierce My Ear, is based on
That's right.
somebody voluntarily, they piercing their ear showing, hey, I'm staying with you.
Yeah, I'm yours. That's right. You know how long it took me to figure that out? So I'm going to read from 1 Corinthians 7. Paul wrote about slaves quite a bit. I'm going to start in verse 21 of 1 Corinthians 7. Well, I'm going to start in 20. Each one should remain in the condition in which he was called. Were you a bondservant when you were called? Do not be concerned about it. But if you can gain your freedom, avail yourself the opportunity. For he who is called in the Lord as a bondservant is a free man of the Lord. Likewise, he was a free man when called as a bondservant of Christ. You were bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. So, brothers, in whatever condition each was called, let him remain. Let him remain with God. It's kind of an interesting statement there, right? If you can get, was it too much to say, well, don't even try to get your freedom? That wasn't his point, was it? If it's available to you.
I think he's saying it's not owed to you.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. That was basically saying, abide by the law. Because, a man could free a slave. An owner, a master could say, okay, well, I'm going to give you your freedom, right? But it wasn't something that they should be actively going and trying to escape, right?
It seems like this is exactly some of the things that Jesus was accused of either doing or trying to, rebel against authority and all this,
Change the status quo.
some of the charges brought against him at night. And if we were supposed to do this very thing, Jesus would have led this very thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So there were life than going out in the street.
Yeah, they still didn't own anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. You think it's tough now to work your way up from nothing. You think about back then, it would be really tough. You had all kinds of obstacles against you there. But I just love that, what's that mean in, oh, I lost it. For he who is called in the Lord is a bondservant, is a freed man of the Lord. Kind of goes to what we've been talking about on Wednesday nights, right? Are we slaves to each other in the kingdom, in Christ's kingdom?
Should be.
What do you mean?
We should serve each other.
Serve, but are we slaves? Do we have masters? We have a master.
That other person's not a master.
We're brothers. That's a different relationship. But yeah, you serve family just because of family. You don't serve as a master and slave. It's not that kind of relationship. Although maybe the serving could be the same. But it's just interesting, right? He's a free man of the Lord. But then what does it turn around and say? Well, what we were just talking about. You're a free man of the Lord, but then at the same time, what are you? Well, I'm servant of Christ. It's basically, I mean, where your position in the world is kind of, I think Ernie got a lot of slack for this when we started the Wednesday night class, when he talked about how, does God really care about what you do in this world? Like as far as your occupation. Yeah. Your heart, your spirit, how you act in those situations, right? I mean, if you cared, is there someone, let me just ask this question. Is this God's plan that you're just always going to be a slave? And you were born to be a slave. And that was my occupation that I had, my plan I had for you. I don't think so. It's just the situation that you ended up in. Right? What you do with it is up to you. And that's what God cares about. What you do in that situation. There's a lot of interesting thoughts and discussion we could have on this, but don't let anybody tell you to try to convince you that the Bible condones slavery. It doesn't. You got to think about the world differently. And it's through the lenses of the kingdom and what that means, not the world view. And that's, I think, why people get all confused when they read the Bible from a worldly view and go, well, that just absolutely doesn't make sense. Well, you're thinking about it wrong. So.
It's just saying, just because you're a slave, you act any different than any other Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
You should
all
act.
he's telling them.
Yeah, you should act as a Christian should, no matter what circumstances you're in.
God can use you no matter what
Right.
circumstance you're in. Look at Joseph. Yeah, he was a slave.
You know, there's a quote in here, I was going to read it. I thought it was interesting. Because there's a whole section here about Christianity and slavery, but here it is. It says, Christianity pours in the oil that lubricates and improves even the most unsavory situations.
Joseph, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There's many examples where people were slaves and just still lived the Christian life. And
Well, they lived a godly life, right? They ended up,
Yeah, godly.
with better, things improved. I mean, that wasn't always easy, but no.
It's amazing though, he mentions, two that gained authority over everybody but the czar.
Yeah.
I mean, just because of, acting correctly as a slave. Well, of course, what God just mentioned, but I mean, basically, they never did. They always showed a godly sense about it.
Right. There was another thing in here I wanted to kind of say, we're about out of time on that, but I thought it was an interesting statement. I was trying to figure out, I didn't have time to study this out last night. It was talking about how slavery did eventually, for the most part in the world today, slavery is pretty much gone. I don't know if you could say that there's 60 million slaves around the world anymore. I really don't know. I know that it still exists, but does it exist to the degree that it did at one, it once did? And I think that it doesn't, and a large part of that's to thank. Christianity is to thank for that, right? Get my words right. Oh, here it is. So is there any, the only thing I could think of was in a negative context about leaven. What are we told about leaven? Could that be true in both directions? We're told, what is the warning on that? That's a negative connotation, right? As far as the context of that is, you let something in that's bad, what's going to happen? It's going to kind of infiltrate and take over the whole batch, right? Can that work the other way? I think it's harder, yeah. I definitely think it's harder. But the point that this I thought this was a good sentence. I want to read it to you. The great principle of Christianity, looking to the reform of existing social evils, is that of working as leaven and not as dynamite. Does leaven work quickly? That takes some time, right? It's not as quick as dynamite. That's kind of what we've been talking about on this now. So this whole thing has been really helpful as far as looking at it in that context, as far as the kingdom and the world. We need to change hearts. When we change hearts, then social problems start to change, right? We're not going to do it through laws. We're not going to do it through legislation. It doesn't change anything. Those people that still want to do those things, they're still going to do them if their heart's inclined to it. But if we change their hearts, if God changes their hearts, but through the Word, that's the only way that it's going to work and stick, right? And that's going to take a while. It's not like dynamite. It's not the end-all, be-all thing. We'd probably be pretty happy if somebody got up there in Congress and was somehow able to end abortion tomorrow. Through a law, we say, oh, that's a great thing, but is it really going to change that much? Probably not. It just won't be as public. The sin, the hard issues are still going to be there. So I just thought that was an interesting concept of leaven and not dynamite. We're not called to go out and take up arms and fight for these social injustices and to make sure that everyone's treated fairly. Thoughts? We got probably 2 minutes.
Yeah, I've got one thought on verse 1 there. You notice that at the end of that verse it says that the reason for all this is so that the name of God and our doctrine will not be spoken against. Perhaps you've heard it said that, I don't care what they think about me, well, God cares.
Yeah.
What's thought about
Right.
him, and what's thought about our doctrine. It's very, very important. He put these things in place just for that reason.
That's right. It's a good point. I've heard that a lot. No, and how many times do we say, you can't judge me, don't talk bad about me or anything. It matters.
Yeah, God really cares what's spoken about him. And if we give somebody a reason to say something negative about God, God cares.
Absolutely. Good point. Anyone else? Next week we'll continue on in chapter 6. And hopefully, we probably won't get through. I'm not going to make that, because we won't get through 1 Timothy next week, but probably 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll be done with 1 Timothy and go into 2 Timothy. And I will say it again, if you haven't seen, I'll put a link on, I'll put it on Facebook again, this James Kaufman commentary is I really enjoy it. It's the same thing with all commentaries, it's just a man's comments on scripture, but it's interesting. And it gets you to go look at other passages and to question things. It's a helpful study tool. So And they're free online. I found that out after I bought the book. I don't know, it's nice to have a book. Talking about paper, reading it, so. All right, well, thanks for your attention.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Bring them up.
The only one.
How y'all doing?
I've always studied it.
Running behind.
Well, that's what I've always studied. That's what- Anytime anybody studies it, that's what they say. Probably something in my mind. What it is.
Go ahead.
It is. But I got to study that.
That whole topic is.
Tuesday, we did the whole year, it's not. And I wonder.
Get up.
I get myself.
We kind of put together a little bit of wine here.
Even over there.
One bit Franklin on the other.
Jesus, first